Welcome to the Painting of the Week podcast, where we look at some of the most significant paintings throughout history. Introducing your hosts, Phil Grabsky and Laura Bentham.
Welcome to this week's Painting of the Week. I'm on my own this week. I'm not with Laura because I'm in Washington, D.C. at the wonderful National Gallery of Art, Washington, which is one of my favourite galleries in the entire world. I'm very privileged to be with Mary Morton, who is the curator and head of the Department of French Paintings, and is also the curator with Kimberly Jones of a wonderful exhibition which is currently on until middle of January 2025, called Paris 1874, The Impressionist Moment. This is an exhibition that has come from the Musée d'Orsay. It's a shared show, although there are differences between the two shows. We're going to talk today about a painting that Mary has chosen by Auguste Renoir called Pont Neuf. And is it 1872? 1872. Just to remind you, for those of you that are new to Painting of the Week, that if you go to our website, which is seventh-art.com, press on the podcast button, then you can see the painting, or go to the YouTube channel, and you can do the same thing. And here we go. So, Mary, of dozens and dozens, hundreds of wonderful paintings in the gallery, what drew you to choose this one as one of, it's impossible to have a favourite, but one of your favourite paintings?
Well, it's a really beautiful early work by Renoir, and the Impressionist movement doesn't start for another 2 years until 1874, which is the subject of our exhibition. This one is from 1872, and it's kind of an astonishing view of Paris 1 year after what Victor Hugo called l'année terrible, which was the Franco-Prussian War that started in the summer of 1870, the brutal siege of Paris by the Prussians during one of the worst winters on record, when Paris was cut off from the rest of the world. No food, no fuel, no information, no communication, no in and out. And then the even more horrific, as if things couldn't have gotten worse, the suppression of this 2-month-old sort of socialist government that was established in March called the Commune, suppressed by the French army during a week, about 7 or 8 days, in May of 1871, known as the Bloody Week, Le Semaine Sanglante, and in which the Russian army, in which the French army came in from Versailles and murdered any and all communards and even reputed communards. And we're thinking maybe 15,000, 20,000, 25,000. I've seen the number 35,000. The number is unclear because, of course, the government didn't want to advertise how many communards, how many French citizens of Paris had been murdered. And then you have this beautiful painting by Renoir.
But just on a point of history, so Napoleon III, who's taken prisoner by the Prussians, does he have a role in ordering the National Army to retake Paris? Who's overseeing that? Who's decided? Who's fighting back against the communards?
So that is Adolphe Thiers, who was actually kind of a brilliant politician, and then MacMahon was the general. Actually Marshal MacMahon is the one that comes in with the army and does the dirty business. No, Napoleon III is not around. He is.
He never returns, does he?
No, and then he dies. I think it's 73. But and he's persona non grata. Nobody wants to see him in France because he was. He got into this war. He shouldn't have. He declared war on Prussia. Bismarck had been needling him to do it, but they were so defeated so quickly. It was so humiliating that he was out.
Now, I don't want to take you off on a tangent straight away, though I'm going to, which is, so France declares itself a republic at this point, Now, I can imagine in Britain, if we were suddenly to declare ourselves a republic, that would impact upon the world of art. Is 1874 in any way a reflection of the fact that the monarchy is over? Did they think it was over for good?
Well, actually, yeah. So what happens is the Third Republic in its early years was incredibly conservative. And many people felt that they were preparing the way for the return of the monarchy. It was called the return to order. And sort of there were vice police out just trying to tamp down what was felt to be a terribly self-indulgent 2 decades under the Second Empire. And that, in fact, the Second Empire led to the pains and the horrors and the humiliations of 1870-71. The Comte de Chambord is lurking out there on the margins, and the Catholic Church is on the rise. And absolutely, in 1874, the Salon was quite conservative. And this is one of the reasons that you had the breakout group of independents that included Renoir, that had what is now known as the First Impressionist exhibition.
Because one of the key things of your exhibition, and for those who are listening to this after the middle of January 2025, I do urge you to go online and buy the catalogue, which is superb. One of the points of the exhibition is that you can't really, I mean, it's always the case, isn't it? You can't really understand what's happening in the world of art without understanding the historical context.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, and that pertains even to a movement like Impressionism, which seemingly has very little to do with the social, political, economic context in which it was made. I mean, when we think of Impressionism, we think about Monet and Pissarro and Renoir, painting these pretty pictures of fields and meadows and poppies and the sunshine and lovely ladies in lovely dresses. And one of the points of our exhibition is that is not what was in the first Impressionist exhibition. There were a few of those kinds of paintings, but there was much more. And that all of it, in a sense, absolutely can be discussed in terms of responsiveness to its moment. I mean, with 3 years earlier, from 1874, was this catastrophic event in Paris, and Paris is still sort of smoldering. I mean, there's not actual fire and smoke, but there are ruins all over the city, and the Parisians during that siege had been reduced to freezing cold temperatures. They had very little heat. Eating farm animals. I was just reading in this wonderful new book by Sebastian Smee about the decision that finally was made to eat this the couple of elephants from the zoo that everybody loved. All the children loved them, and they're like, no, we're gonna have to eat the elephants.
Wow,
they ate the elephants. It's so sad. So this is Paris. This is the city of light. This is the capital of modernity in the Western world, reduced to just this shambles. And then, the question is, how do you have Impressionism coming right out of that?
So there's an alternative painting that Renoir could have done, where there is artillery damage to those buildings in the background. Maybe there are a couple of veterans with one leg crossing this bridge.
Yeah, or just turn left or right, and you will see, the ruins of the Hôtel de Ville and the ruins of the Palais de Tuileries. But he's looking forward across the Pont Neuf, which is in fact one of the oldest bridges, if not the oldest bridge in Paris, but it was new when it was built. And it's just a sunny, lovely day. You have all different types of Parisians all together on the sidewalks and crossing the street. Middle class, upper class, working class, milliners, bakers, soldiers. And I think it's Renoir just sort of stitching together this dream of social harmony after all of this divisive history, this violent, horrible history in which Parisians were set against each other, and then the sunshine. You have the tricolor flag flying at the right. There's the equestrian statue in the center of Henri IV, just signifying an earlier moment in heroic French history, and it's it's such an optimistic picture. You can almost feel the breeze on this sunny spring day. It's glittering with optimism and sort of Parisian love.
If you speak to a broadcaster and say, why aren't you putting out on peak time documentaries, films about the the vile assault of Russia on Ukraine, or what's happening in Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, etc., they'll say, well, our audience wants to be entertained at 7, 8 and 9 o'clock. To what extent is Renoir here perhaps thinking of or answering to a potential audience, i.e. buyers, who actually don't want paintings on their wall of partially destroyed buildings? They want something which is blue sky.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think one of the reasons I love this painting as much as I do is that I think it is doing that, for sure. But I think it's doing even more, and just what I was referring to in terms of like just social harmony. I mean, it's really a dream, and you just can't imagine how how fractured everybody was feeling. So it's actually doing quite a bit of work, in addition to entertaining and pleasing. Even the landscape paintings that we think of by Renoir, but even more Monet and Sisley and Pissarro, I think those are also doing a kind of healing work for these people in 1874, for Parisians. As they were felt just really destabilized by these events. And the French countryside is a great source of healing and kind of a salve. And I think, it's hard to find a part of France that's not beautiful. You've got the railway system. So I think French people are trying to find their footing and remember the agrarian past and the rural gorgeousness of that country by, as they feel so insecure in the face of Prussia's victory. I mean, they're trying to feel better about themselves, basically. And these artists are helping them do that.
Now, Impressionism hasn't emerged out of a void. Certainly by the 1860s, you have artists like Manet, of course. Would this painting in 1872, and therefore perhaps ready by 1873, have been accepted by the Salon? Because obviously the show that's currently on here at the National Gallery of Art is, I wouldn't say comparing and contrasting, but it's talking about both of these shows on virtually simultaneously, not quite. But the Independent show, which we now think of as the first Impressionist show, and the Salon show, which started on the 1st or 2nd of May. The Independent show is April, isn't it? So, is it too simplistic to say a painting like this would never have been accepted by the Salon, and therefore they had to have their own show?
There were scenes of contemporary life and of modern urban life that hung at the Salon. Giuseppe De Nittis in particular had great success gaining entry for those kinds of images. His facture, the way that he builds up his paintings, is much more meticulous and clear, and you could even say respectable. There's something that was felt to be disrespectful of a painting that looked like a sketch, that didn't look finished. A loose touch like you see here in this Renoir. I don't think this would have been accepted by the Salon jury in 1874. There are paintings like the, we can't talk about pictures that you can't see, but it's a great question, but I don't think it would have been accepted.
It's been put forward by the exhibition, certainly in Paris, Musée d'Orsay's show, that the first room of the Independent show was Renoir's, and that it was drawn by lots. I think I've read in the past somewhere that wasn't the Salon alphabetical?
Yes.
And hung top, floor to ceiling.
Yeah.
So Renoir gets the first room. It's 2 rows, as far as I understand it. So that must have been a great appeal, that he's able to present more than the 3 paintings that you're normally allowed to show at the Salon. No guarantee they'd be accepted. So here you have a room, I don't know if it was the whole room, but certainly some of, or all of the first room, just of his paintings.
Exactly, yeah. And he ended up hanging more than he was supposed to. He ended up really taking a strong hand. And he had one of the highest priced pictures in the whole exhibition, and one of the largest, La Parisienne from Cardiff. He had a still life painting that was very beautiful. This cityscape, I mean, they're trying to show their range. They are trying to market themselves. So Renoir shows himself as a still life painter, a landscape painter, and a figural painter, kind of portraitist. And then, I think the range of Monet's submissions is even more surprising. He has a painting from 1868, which is a large figural work called Le Déjeuner. He has Impression Sunrise. He has the Port of Le Havre. I mean, he also is trying to show a range, I think, in order to attract buyers that might want to invest in him and in his career. Renoir would have been thrilled.
As an aside, it's great in your exhibition to see the two Le Havre paintings by Monet. I wonder whether he would have hung them side by side in the show. I guess they would have been very close to one another.
I
Same
think
view
so.
from his hotel balcony.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as best we know it, I think, if memory serves me correctly, only 4 paintings were sold. Just over 3,000 people visited.
Mm-hmm.
I know on one of your wall, not captions, but texts, talks about the fact that the majority of those 3,000 plus people would have been friends, reviewers, and critics.
Yeah.
Why do you think that they couldn't draw the public in? Presumably, once the reviews have gone into the newspapers, you think that might encourage people to come?
Yeah, and it did, and they did get some publicity. There was a lot going on in town in 1874. Even just in the spring, I think there were 6 other shows going on in the city, and then the Salon opened. So there's a lot of competition. And if this is just a small little show up in Nadar's studio, you kind of had to be in the know to even know about it. It was 1 franc to gain entry. And I think it was they just didn't have the platform, and so it's not bad for a first show. It's too bad that they didn't sell more, and they really did consider it to be a failure, but they would try again. A couple of years later.
It's funny that we continue to call it Nadar's studio, because he had vacated it.
He still owned it.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he still owned it, and his name was still on it. And he was renting it. Well, he was renting it out, although I think he let them use it for free, but it was an empty space that was just like ideal.
Okay.
And he's such good friends with all of them, and he's really part of them.
And so cause even studio is not, it's really more like an apartment, isn't it?
Well, but it was a commercial space for doing photographic portraits and all kinds of photographic work. And I think that commercial element is important. It was in the heart of a highly commercial, brand new neighborhood, where the stock exchange was there. There were a lot of banks. The American Bank was there. Hotels catering to tourists and to rich Europeans and Americans coming into town. The Gare Saint-Lazare is not that far away. So it was really well located, and they thought they would get a lot of foot traffic, and I think they did.
Looking at the term Impressionism, so there's a reviewer called Leroy who writes a little bit quirky kind of review, or the way he writes it is kind of quirky. It's like a conversation between 2 people, in which he uses this term impressionist. But only 4 days later, there's another review which is titled Impressionism, or The Impressionists rather. Mm-hmm. Now, do you think that person had read Leroy's review 4 days earlier and taken up the term? Because that seems very swift.
Well, yeah, I mean, impression was a word that had been used for decades for landscape effects. So it's very much in the discourse and in the critical discourse, and it's being used pretty regularly. In fact, there is an essay, I believe, in the catalog that talks about that. So it's not really an original moniker. And in 1874, it would not be the title given to this group of artists. That doesn't really happen for another several years. Not until 1877 do people really talk about them as impressionists. So they are not impressionists in 1874. But it comes from Monet's title, and it sort of catches on, but not immediately.
What happens after 1874? Where does this show, the independent show, take those particular artists, or certainly the key impressionist artists that we know, and allied to that, what happens to the Salon? Does it? Yeah,
that's really interesting. So the group breaks up in December. And then there's a handful that really want to do it again. And Degas is one of the main ringleaders. Pissarro is terribly loyal. And so they reconfigure the group, always changing the membership. So a lot of artists don't come back for the second show in '76, and then Degas in particular goes out and recruits new artists. But it does winnow down. 31 is a lot, and I think in the succeeding shows, it's never going to be quite that large. Important people will come in. In '79, you have Mary Cassatt. Gustav Caillebotte comes in, particularly in the third show. He really dominates the third show, so it changes its character quite a bit. And then I would say by the middle of the 1880s, this Impressionism moniker absolutely has stuck, and there is a particular dealer who is marketing Impressionism, which consists of about 6 or 7 artists that he thinks will sell not only to French collectors, but even more particularly to American collectors, which makes this very much an American show, which is why we're so thrilled to be able to celebrate it this year.
Mary, thank you very much. The show continues at the National Gallery of Art until the middle of January 2025. After that, as I said earlier, I do urge you to get hold of a catalogue. And Paul Durand-Ruel, that Mary just mentioned, we made a film called Durand-Ruel, or The Man Who Made the Impressionists. Plenty of films about the Impressionists in the exhibition on screen brand. Again, all that information is at 7th-art.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Painting of the Week podcast. For more information, please visit our website at 7th-art.com or contact us by emailing info@7th-art.com. See you next time.